Kafla TV.
Next, we'll have Caroline, who's our interpreter on the Korean line. And Caroline will let Korean-speaking participants know that the call-in number for them is 657-390-4600.
한국어 통역을 원하시는 분은 전화로 657-390-4600으로 전화해 주시기 바랍니다.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you. All right, so let's go ahead and get started, shall we? We've got an hour. We're going to try to use as much of it as we can to get as many questions answered. So let me start by introducing our guest today from the EDD department, Ken Gomez. He's the Workforce Services Deputy Division Chief of the Employment Development Department, and he oversees the employment programs as well as works in partnership with unemployment insurance and local and state agencies and organizations. Their goal, of course, is to deliver a wide range of employment and training services in our local area. Ken, thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome, and I'd like to add my welcome to the group as well. This is such a wonderful opportunity for the EDD to reach a lot of people in a very short amount of time, and we're very grateful to Senator Mitchell and her team for establishing today's call. We're really very happy to be here, and we have some great information to share with you. We're going to talk a little bit about the CARES Act, as many of you may know, and how it relates to the unemployment insurance program, which we refer to very affectionately as UI. And then the real impetus behind today's conversation was to have enough time to get your advanced questions answered. And if there are other questions, make sure that they're entered into the chat pod, and we'll do our best to answer those. If not, time runs out, we'll certainly provide those answers to Senator Mitchell's office, so they'll have those available to you. So we have a lot to cover today, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to ask Sonia to put up the presentation. We have about a 10-minute formal presentation first. I promise I will try not to bore you too much. So once that's up, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, can everyone see the presentation?
It's almost, here we go.
Okay, great. All right, well, welcome again to today's Teletown Hall. We're going to talk about unemployment insurance and COVID-19. You know, one of the big questions we get, I'm going to cover on the next slide, is really how are we doing as a state? And how are we doing as the EDD? So I want to share some statistics with you on the next slide. Okay, looks like there's a bit of delay with everything here. So let's go ahead and get started with those numbers. Since the pandemic began, which for most of us in California was March the 14th, we have processed 4.9 million regular UI claims. In addition to that, we've processed over 700,000 PUA claims. That's our acronym for Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. So altogether, we processed 5.6 million claims between March 14th and May 30th of this year. Putting that into perspective, in a normal month, a normal April, we file about 280,000 claims. This April, we filed over 1.5 million claims. You could see that our workload went through the roof, 5 times what we normally handle. Also, in terms of benefits, I'm sure you're interested to see how much we've paid out thus far. So far, we've paid $22.2 billion to Californians. And lastly, our unemployment rate has gone up just a little bit since last week. It's now hovering at 16.1%. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. I'm going to share with you some information about what the EDD is doing to help mitigate this historic volume of claims. Unlike the Great Recession, which evolved over time, the pandemic was swift, sudden, and unrelenting. Fortunately, the EDD had been planning for another downturn in the economy for many years. In fact, we started after the last recession to make sure we would be better prepared for the next downturn. However, even with this degree of planning, the pandemic really just broke the mold for everything that we knew and had prepared for. We knew that we had to actually implement some things very quickly and very fast to be able to keep up with the inundation of requests from our claimants. So what we did is the first thing we did is we took staff from other EDD branches and state agencies and redirected them to the UI effort. We've also hired 900 new staff with plans to add at least 2,100 more. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. We did simplify some of our processes to file claims and pay benefits faster. To accommodate the CARES Act, we had to reprogram our system so that we could automate most of the processes, because several of them were manual prior to this. And we upgraded our servers to handle a higher volume of claims. We know that working through a new computer system is not easy, especially for people like myself. So we wanted to make sure that we had the right level of support for you. With that said, we established the UI Online Assistance Center for Technical Help. I'll go a little bit more into that later on too. Lastly, just about 2 weekends ago, we know that people love text messaging and they like to be notified immediately when something happens. So we've implemented text messaging to claimants for more timely communication. We are required, as you know, by law to send certain documents by mail, which we know can take a little bit of time. But the great thing about text messaging is it's instant. While it may not replace the actual document itself, it at least will keep you updated on the progress of your claim. So now let's move into the CARES Act. It does consist of 3 components. The first one is the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, or as we call it in California, Pandemic Additional Compensation. And basically what this is, it applies to all of our claims, including the PUA claims. It's a $600 stimulus payment in addition to your weekly benefit amount. Next up is the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation. That is actually an extension of up to 13 weeks of extra benefits. And lastly, new to everyone, including ourselves, is the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. That provides 39 weeks of benefits for those who don't normally qualify for UI, such as business owners, the self-employed, and the independent contractors. So that's just a brief overview of the 3 major components. Now I want to break them down on the following slide for you. We're going to go component by component, and I'll do my best to make it so that I'm not repeating myself here. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so it looks like we went, oh, there we go, thank you. So basically what this boils down to is it's a 600 weekly stimulus payment that is automatically added to your weekly benefit amount. It applies to almost all of our claims, including regular benefits, the work sharing claims, extensions, and PUA. There are 2 miscellaneous claim types that this does not apply to, and that would be the training extensions, if you're participating in the California Training Benefits Program, or the State Special School Benefits Program. But those are the only 2 exceptions. Other than that, it applies to all other claims. Keep in mind that this was only authorized for a very finite period of time between March 29th and July 25th of this year. So it's about a 4-month range. And again, this is automatically added to your weekly benefit amount. Moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about the extension. This is something that we've recently implemented. On the next slide. And this provides an additional 13 weeks of benefits when all benefits associated with regular UI claims are exhausted. When we say regular UI claims, we also mean the work sharing claims as well. It is filed automatically if your claim began on or after June 2nd of 2019. However, if your claim was filed before that, you would need to file a new claim so that the EDD can determine the right program for you. The extension went into effect on March 29th and will expire on December 26th of this year. So again, it has a very set period of time that it applies. Good news is that the $600 weekly stimulus also applies to the extension, again, between March 29th and July 25th of this year. Keep in mind that additional state and federal extensions may become available at a later time, and it all depends on what is authorized. Usually it's linked to the current unemployment rate. So we keep our eyes peeled on that to see once our other extensions expire, what the next steps would be. So let's get to what everybody's probably waiting to hear about, and that's our new program. Because some of you might be already aware of the stimulus payment from the Great Recession or the federal extension from before. But the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program is something that is brand new to all of us. And I know it can be a bit confusing, so I'm hoping to demystify it a little bit for you today. As I mentioned earlier, this applies to people that normally don't qualify for UI, such as our small business owners, our self-employed individuals and independent contractors. It also applies to our claimants with a regular UI claim who have exhausted all benefits and extensions, as well as individuals with a limited work history or those who could not begin a new job due to COVID-19. So you're probably wondering, what does a limited work history mean? Briefly, what it is in order to qualify for a regular UI claim, you have to make a certain amount of money in what we call the base period. And we look at the highest quarterly earnings during an 18-month look back to see if you have enough money for a regular claim. Now, we know that there are some folks that are just starting off in the working world and maybe they don't have enough, yet they're not independent contractors, so they wouldn't normally be available for UI, so we transition them to the PUA program. This particular program provides 39 weeks of benefits with no waiting period. This is really important. And you're probably wondering, gee, does the extension apply to this? And the answer is it does not. The good news is that whoever designed the program was thinking ahead. They took the basic period of time in which a UI regular claim is valid, which is 26 weeks, and they added the 13 weeks into that, giving you a total of 39 weeks. That way there's no extra paperwork to transition from a claim to an extension. It's a seamless process. The PUA program went into effect on February 2nd, and it's set to end on December 26th of this year. Again, the $600 weekly stimulus applies between March 29th and July 25th. And because the EDD just started accepting applications on April the 28th due to programming limitations, all claims are retroactive to when you became directly impacted by COVID-19. So that's why it was really important when you filed your claim online to let us know that first date that you became impacted, so we could take the system and go back to that time and date to start your claim. Keeping in mind, though, claims cannot begin any earlier than February 2nd, which was the effective date of the program. We did have to implement this in 2 phases because we wanted to get the program up and running as quickly as we could. So phase 1 was simply everybody received $167 per week. That was the weekly amount for everyone. And of course, the stimulus applied to that as well during the time frame that we mentioned. Now we have just about completed phase 2. The EDD is going back to look at those folks who reported 2019 net earnings over a certain amount to see if we can increase that from 167 up to and including our maximum of 450. And again, this would be retroactive to the first date of your claim, just like the effective date. So we should be finished with this process hopefully by the end of the week, and you'll be receiving notification in the mail with any adjustments to your weekly benefit amount. We also know that during fluid times like this, it's really important to keep our customers well informed. So I wanted to share a few quick EDD updates with you. These are some of the things I mentioned on one of the opening slides. We've recently implemented text messages to confirm when your claim or extension has been filed, when the first payment has been made, and if you had an identity issue to resolve and you sent us all the documents, we will also text you when those documents are received. So I know a lot of our customers are saying, we're getting texts from the EDD, but are they for real? And the answer is yes. This is just a new way for us to communicate with people. So please, if you do get a text, to confirm your claim has been filed or extension, where the first payment on your account has been made, as well as identity documents being received, it is a legitimate email from the EDD. We also have for our UI Online customers, which is a large percentage of our customer base, we send them an email reminder to their personal email account every time it's for them to go online and certify for benefits. And what this does is it keeps them on track so that they know, oh, okay, it's not this Sunday, it's the following Sunday. UI Online is also very intuitive because if you forget, you go to your home page and it tells you right there whether or not you have weeks to certify for or when to check back. Another recent development is our EDD Virtual Agent. And this is really good if you just want general information. And just so that you know, everything we're covering in today's webinar is on our website. But the key is knowing where to look for it. And sometimes I even get stuck trying to find things. So I just go to the search engine or the chat button and it usually comes up right away. So the chatbot feature is something new on our website. It's also available from our Facebook page for those of you that prefer Facebook. As I mentioned earlier, we set up the UI Online Assistance Center. This is a really great support for our customers that are trying to learn our system or just might have a struggle getting into it or registering. It's open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day of the week except state holidays. And these folks are the techie guys. They're there to help you with registration. They can provide you with your EDD account number, resets. They can even answer general UI questions for you and help you navigate the system. So if you have a question about, well, how do I fill out this screen, they could assist you with that. So they really are your technical support. So keep that in mind. Another thing that we're very proud of is most of our claims are auto-filed by the system, and when that occurs, a UI Online account is automatically created for you. So if you get an email from the EDD, it normally says, EDD, do not reply, online account created. That means you don't have to register, that you're already taken care of, that you can use your account right away. And then because we work with Bank of America on the debit card, you can set up alerts through them via their website to let you know every time a deposit is made to your card or when you have a low balance. So those are some ways to keep well informed without having to pick up the phone and call someone. So on the next slide, what we're going to talk about is some of the help that's available to you 24/7. So everything we have basically for our online tools, it all begins on our website at www.edd.ca.gov. And here you'll find information on how to file a claim, complete information about the CARES Act, COVID-19 updates, which I would highly recommend that you check on a regular basis, especially if you're waiting for maybe an update on an extension or something of that nature. And then we also do a weekly webinar series, which we record. It has much more content than I'm covering today. It's about an hour, but it also goes into the process of the UI program, what you do, how you file, how you get your benefits. And it includes some of the screenshots to show the folks that are filing for PUA what the screens look like. There's also a short Q&A at the end of it. And that's recorded on our website and accessible from our COVID-19 webpage. The other tool that customers are telling us that they really find invaluable is being able to go into their account, anytime they want throughout the day and find out whether or not their certification has been processed, or if they have a phone interview, or when it's time to certify. So this is a really good system to do that. You can even file or reopen a claim through UI Online as well. One of the features that we really strongly urge you to use during the pandemic is it's called Contact Us. It's a link on the top of your UI Online homepage, and it allows you to send a secure message about your claim. Let's say you wanted to know why a payment was pending. You would send us a message explaining, that you're looking for certain weeks, why are they pending? And then we'll research it and get back to you via email. And it is secure. Everything is, encrypted. You don't have to worry about a thing. We also know that we have customers that prefer to transact business by phone. And because our hours are somewhat limited, sometimes people need information over the weekend or late at night. So we have our UI self-service phone line available at 1-866-333-4606. And this system is really good because you can certify for benefits over the phone. You can get payment information on your last payment made, and the system is updated daily at 6 a.m. And there's also some really good, helpful pre-recorded information for both claimants and employers on that. So if you wanted, for example, to find out what information is needed to file a claim, you could get that right off the UI self-service phone line. Keep in mind when filing a brand new claim, our system does interact with other government agency systems that have regular maintenance periods. So there are certain times in the late evening, early morning, where the file a new claim feature is not available through UI Online. Everything else is. So if you just want to go on at 3 o'clock in the morning and certify for benefits, that's available. Want to check your last payment, on a Sunday afternoon, still available, no problem. So these are the self-help tools that are available to you. We're hearing from a lot of our customers that they're finding a lot of information on their own, but we also know that it's important to be available to help our customers that have more complex questions, maybe something that was not found on the internet or on their claim. So on the next slide, I'm going to some numbers up here on the screen for you. I'm not going to go over each number individually, but if we can go to the next slide. Okay, it looks like the slides may be stuck here. There we go. All right. So just like anything else, is always knowing when and who to call for information. The first set of numbers I have listed on your screen is if you want either to file or get information specifically about a regular UI or PUA claim. Those folks are available from 8 a.m. to 12 noon, Monday through Friday, except state holidays. And we have phone lines in English, Spanish, Cantonese, Mandarin, and Vietnamese. We also have provisions for those who are deaf and hard of hearing. And in addition to those particular dedicated phone lines, we have our language access program, which is a really good program. We have EDD staff that speak up to 80 different languages, and sometimes if we have to go outside of that to find the language that's desired, we work with the AT&T language line, and they offer over 100 different languages to us. So we know that it's, it's difficult. It's a difficult program to understand. We totally get that people would prefer information in a language that they're more comfortable with, and we're more than happy to provide that service. As I mentioned earlier, we have the UI Online Assistance Center. Again, that is 1-833-978-2511, open daily from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for things like password resets, system navigation, and general UI information. Keep in mind, the representatives of that number cannot access claim and payment information, but they can help you with other information, such as how to register for UI Online, or if you need to know what screen do I go to find my payment history, they can assist you with that. And then lastly, there's the UI self-service line that we recently covered. So we have a lot of numbers there. Knowing the right ones to call would be of great assistance. It also helps us make sure that you're getting to the right people without having to be transferred. So again, regular UI and PUI claim specific questions, or to file, use the first block of numbers on the screen. It's just a technical question about your online account. Just call the UI Online Assistance Center. That's the second number posted. And then lastly, if you want to certify for benefits by phone or hear your last payment made, it's the UI self-service phone line. Okay. So I hope that gave you a brief overview. Again, I'm not going to quiz anyone at the end here. We're here to talk about what's on your minds, get your questions answered, and hopefully shed some light on what the different programs are that we offer to you during this time. One thing I did want to offer, and we're getting this on a lot of our webinars, is I actually work for the Workforce Services branch of the EDD. And what we basically do is we connect job seekers to jobs and also job seekers to employers. But we do act as liaisons, and we work with the unemployment insurance branch. It's part of our overall EDD family. So with that said, let's go ahead and start with some of the questions.
So, Mr. Gomez, let me tell you, the chat room was filled with people who felt their time was wasted. They wanted their questions answered. We got some angry people out there in the 30th Senate District, and I certainly understand that. And let me say that the point of the full comprehensive presentation was because of the nature of the hundreds of calls we get in my office every day. I appreciate that many of you are able to navigate the EDD website and have access and knew that information, but a good number of my constituents didn't. That's why we wanted this presentation to be as comprehensive as possible. I'm sorry if you felt your time was wasted. We're going to do all that we can to answer as many questions as we can. Furthermore, because you RSVP'd and many of you submitted your questions ahead of time, those are the questions that we're going to focus on. If you write your question in the chat and we didn't get a chance to pose your question, you have the commitment from my staff, working collaboratively with you and EDD, that we will continue to do all that we can to get your questions answered. So let me get started with the questions that we received. So first of all, Mr. Gomez, get ready.
Okay.
So again, a very common question is, where are my benefits? But I also saw in the chat, people are frustrated. They say you don't answer any of the phone numbers you put up. They never get their email responded to. They spend countless hours going through all of those tools you talked about how to reach you, and they never get an answer or a response. That is the core summation of what I saw in the chat. So how do people reach you if they're not being successful in reaching you through the tools that you shared?
Well, first of all, let me just acknowledge their frustration. I know that our staff sometimes feel the same level of frustration because we're unable to answer every call that comes through. Unfortunately, it boils down to the sheer fact that we have an historic level of claims, only so many resources available. We are ramping up, by the way, so we're really happy to share that with you, and we are hiring aggressively throughout the state. If you'd like to start a state correct and provide information later on about that. What I would probably start by saying is, if you can, at first, if you could try at least make an attempt with the self-service tools to see if you can at least get an answer or a direction to go in. And then I would also manage expectations by saying some things just do not happen overnight. For example, while you may apply for a PUA claim online, it's not an automated process on the back end. We have to build those claims manually, one by one by one. So that's why we felt it was important once the claims were filed to text you to let you know, hey, you've been waiting for a few days, your claim is ready, now we're ready to pay you. So I would just start by saying, if you could try those tools, we would appreciate it, but we know that they're not always going to work for everyone's situation. And we also know that we try to be general with the information on the website, but we know that everyone has a very unique circumstance, which really requires a conversation. So we're very appreciative to the partnership that we've built with the Senator Mitchell's office over the, whereby their staff can elevate concerns for you. We also have our America's Job Centers of California throughout the state, over 100 locations. Unfortunately, because of the shelter in place, we are not open to the public anymore, but we are reachable by phone. So if there's one in your area and you want to give a ring, give a call. We are not the UI experts. I'll be the first to tell you, we are the experts in helping people find jobs and employers find good candidates, but we are willing to help you and listen and maybe guide you and possibly connect you with someone that could assist. So that's another avenue that would be available to you. We have an office in Culver City, and there's one in Torrance. I'm not sure where everybody lives here, but
why don't we get that from you, and we'll put it in chat and make sure that we send it out to everybody who RSVP'd. Let me try to power through these questions, Mr. Gomez, so we can get as many answers as possible.
Okay.
When is a pension deducted from a UI benefit, and is Social Security considered a pension?
Excellent question, because I've been through this once myself, and going to the last question first, Social Security is not deductible because you contribute toward that. When it comes to a pension, we look at two different things. Did you contribute? And if you did not, it would not be deductible. That's why we ask those questions when we ask, do you expect to receive a pension and did you contribute? Now, if your employer fully funded the pension, it would be deductible dollar for dollar. However, if the pension was earned outside of the base period, for example, let's say you worked for XYZ company 5 years ago, you retired with a pension. Now you're in a different base period altogether with ABC company. The pension from XYZ would not be deductible because they're not a base period employer. So just to sum that up, if you contribute, not deductible. And Social Security, because you contribute to that, not deductible. Where we have to take a look is when the employer contributes. Then we have to make sure that, number one, was it an employer from a few years ago, or were they in the base period? And if they were in the base period, it would be deductible. Next
question. If you are in unemployment penalty, we get dozens of these calls a day. Can your pandemic claim be applied to the penalty weeks?
Okay, let me just talk a little bit about a penalty. Usually what happens when this occurs is if someone has provided the EDD with information that is either false or withholds information for the purpose of obtaining benefits, and we find that to be the case, we do assess penalties and false statements. Now, those apply to regular UI claims. So what we're doing is if you had a regular claim and on a previous claim, for example, where you have these false statement penalties, they need to be served off. However, we do have the option now so that we can keep that on hold during these really difficult times and put you onto a pandemic unemployment assistance or PUA claim. So that's where you would collect. You wouldn't be able to collect from the regular claim at this point, but you could be eligible for not only the PUA weekly amount, but the stimulus payment as well.
All right, ready for the next question?
Okay.
This is for the people who work in retail. We get a lot of inquiries from them. They worked in retail and they were laid off during COVID, but the earnings went substantially down due to the fact that they closed the store, and this person happens to work on a commission. Are they allowed to file for PUA?
Absolutely. Well, let me just state this. If they are W-2 employees, they would file for a regular UI claim first. If they didn't have enough wages to qualify, we would move them to the PUA claim. But I know that some of the stores hire like independent contractors, like for the cosmetics, areas. So those folks would probably be independent contractors, and yes, we'd encourage them to file a PUA claim. We also want to let folks know that a lot of employers are ramping up slowly. So even if you do go back to work, you still might be eligible for partial benefits, depending on your earnings.
You mentioned W-2. This person and a number of others who sent in their questions, they are part W-2, part 1099. So they said, who do they call or how do they get unemployment? They lost all their jobs March 15th. So if you're a tweener, if you will, what do you do?
Right. Well, that's an excellent question. We are required, the way the program is structured, there's what they call a hierarchy of claims, where we have to always kind of like see what the best options are. So we start by filing or attempting to file a regular claim or an extension. If we strike out there, we then move into the pandemic, the PUA claim. So unfortunately, there could be situations where you have maybe just a small amount of W-2 wages, meaning you could qualify for a very low WBA on a regular claim. We have to go with that. That's how the program is structured. Keep in mind, I know it's not exactly what I would like to hear myself, probably not you guys either, but we really just tell people, focus on the $600 stimulus at this point. That's really going to help you get through. But unfortunately, there's no way to combine the two together at this point. The independent contractor, earnings with the other. Just so that folks know, the UI program is funded by employers. It is not funded by employees. And the money goes into a trust fund. And the EDD is responsible for that. And that's why we have to really manage it wisely and follow whatever code and laws are established by the federal government, such as the hierarchy of claims.
Somebody I just saw popped up in chat asked if UI was the same as PUA, and that's a perfect segue. No, unemployment insurance is for people who get W-2s. PUA is something newly created as a result of COVID for those who get 1099s, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Right, even I've learned something. Moving on to the next question. So they are different.
They are totally different eligibilities.
Right. This person received their debit card with their unemployment benefits, but all the documents in the debit card had incorrect data, had a wrong social security number. Therefore, they can't get access to their benefits. They've been calling the numbers. What do you do if there's incorrect data somehow in your claim and you need to get it corrected?
Well, there are a few options. You could log into UI Online and send a secured message so we can make sure that we have the correct social on file. The other option too, just so that you guys know, we do our very best never to put a social in writing any place. So the number may be intentionally scrambled. So don't freak out if you see the number and it's maybe mixed up or jumbled or obfuscated. So that could be another reason why the number doesn't appear. But one thing I would really suggest is whenever we file a claim, we are required to send everyone in writing by mail two different notices. The first one is called Notice of Claim Filing. And on that particular notice, this asks you to verify all of the information, make sure it was captured correctly, because that's what's going to be on your claim. And if it's not correctly on the form, then it tells you to hand amend the form or send an attachment and mail it back to the address on the letter. Same thing holds true with your weekly benefit amount. It's called the Notice of UI Award. And let's just say that you worked for 3 employers, but only 2 were reported. Well, we need to know where's that third one so we can add those wages in for you and give you a higher weekly benefit amount. So it's one of the responsibilities that we put forth to our claimants is when you get documentation or any communication from the EDD, you need to take a look at it and take any action that's necessary. And if you're unclear as far as what to take, let us know and we'll be happy to guide you through it.
So quick question. You talked about the social security numbers being scrambled, but this, a couple of questions have come into the social security number was wrong and therefore they can't get their money. If I get my new debit card in the mail, do I have to go through another step to verify or something before I could get my benefits off the card?
Generally, what they ask is that you activate the card by identifying information, such as the three-letter code from the back and other things, such as the SSN. So what I would recommend is that this has to really be elevated to, we'll need to work with, obviously, B of A to resolve this for the customer. So this is something that is unfortunate. Please be careful, everyone, when you're filing your claims. Double check that last page before you hit submit, just to make sure. I know people that have been filing on their phones. It's not the easiest thing to do. They would prefer a desktop, and I'm not saying that we're not, foolproof either at the EDD end. It's likely that we could have transposed a number. So what I would highly recommend is we elevate that particular one, Senator Mitchell, along with any that would fall into that category. I think that would be the best option for these customers that have waited so long.
Excellent. And so when you say elevated, that we'll contact that person and work it through our legislative liaison with the department. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Which is what we're going to try to do with as many of these, which my staff have been doing now for 12 weeks. And so we'll continue to do that.
Yeah. And if you could put all of them maybe together in one transmittal, that might be helpful. So if we're going to reach out, to B of A, we could do one large call with them or whatever we do to make sure we get everybody taken care of.
On all the questions where people say their name was misspelled, social security number was wrong, something with regard to incorrect data.
Right.
Excellent. What would you suggest for people who are close to retirement but are facing long-term reduced hours and or unemployment?
It's really a question for your financial planner because everyone's really in a different situation. I have friends that work in certain industries that were very hard hit, and they've made the decision to start collecting their Social Security, which is, again, a personal decision because there could be some tax consequences and so forth. But unfortunately, we don't have any programs that would really address that. It's probably something better served by speaking to your financial planner and see what they might recommend. We are hiring. For me, this is a second career, and I'm loving every moment of it. I've been with the ED for 11 years. And so if you would like to explore a second career with the state, our Cal Careers website is an excellent place to start. We're on a mass hiring spree right now. We have offices, in Southern California. And really, again, I would refer you back to your financial planner for that.
And so we did have several questions. People were interested in hiring. And I know from my conversations with Secretary Julie Sue that she talked about the mass hiring of 1,300 employees. I chair the Senate Budget Committee, so that was of interest to me too, making sure that we're in a position as a state to pay for this expansion of hiring to get this work done. So if people are interested, go back to the website. Is that the best thing for them to do?
Actually, we have information on our website, but really all the hiring is done through the Cal Careers website. And they, getting on with the state is not the same as going to, Indeed.com. There's a process, and they walk you through it. They had a really wonderful video up there, but they pulled it down to update it. So we're hoping in another week or so it'll be back up. It kind of goes through the step-by-step process. But there are a lot of jobs outside of unemployment insurance that we're hiring for as well. So if you have a degree in accounting or maybe public administration, there's a lot of opportunities out there with the state.
So quick question about certification. First of all, why does it take so long to certify benefits? And why are they waiting weeks after certification to receive payment?
Well, I would really need to have more information on the specifics of that. But generally speaking, once you certify for benefits, and we're preferring that you do it online or by phone because it's faster, in the perfect world, once it went through, you would have it on your debit card the next day. That's the perfect scenario. But sometimes things go to a pending status, and it could be something as simple as you indicated that you weren't physically able to work or you couldn't work for other reasons. So we have to do a little investigation. It falls on a queue, people review it. If they can gather the information from what you've advised us of, they'll do their best to clear it. If not, they'll have to reach out to you to get that information. So there's a lot of reasons why something could be held up. But if the claim is flowing properly, once you get it going, generally speaking, it should become like clockwork. Once you certify, the next day you should have the payment on your debit card. Again, that's in theory, that's in the perfect world. We know that we're now dealing in the real world at this point. But again, if something is pending, there's a screen in UI Online called the Claim History screen. It will tell you what's been paid, what is pending, and if anything's been disqualified. So,
but I think the challenge is you get this pending,
Yeah.
pending, and you just feel like you're
sometimes we need to, yeah.
in outer space,
Yeah.
electromagnetic outer space. And so there's no clarification, pending one more week. There's no additional info, but just that pending. And so it makes people call their state elected officials. It's just, you feel like you're lost in a loop.
Yeah, and sometimes the pending takes longer than it really should. We hope, in many cases, the pending just falls on a queue, we verify it, we pay it, and it goes, 1-2 days. But if it's there for quite a long time, it means it needs some sort of intervention by a claims representative. So
well, how would you define quite a long time so people know?
I would probably say 5 days or more, because we really do our best when these things fall on queue for our staff intervention. It's one of the highest priorities that we have is to pay the claims. And the way we do that is we go and we work them as they're received in that particular order. We review them. If we can clear them, we pay them. So I would just say if it's over 5 days, log into UI Online, send us a message to the Contact Us link, and we can take a look at it for you.
And so the chat line is rolling so fast at my computer screen I can barely keep up. People saying it's been 6 weeks, 7 weeks. They understand that they'll get back pay, but people are trying to survive today. Everyone says 5 days. No one has had an experience where it's just 5 days.
Well, I do personally know people that have had experiences where it's actually been 1 or 2 days and the pending has been released.
Okay.
We do ask people to monitor things for us to make sure the system's working as designed. So I apologize if it's been a long time, but anytime it's that length of time, you guys, you need to get it escalated because there's something going on with that claim that the system's not able to figure out. And so again.
And again, when you say escalate, tell me what you mean by that.
Well, there's 2 ways you can do that. If it's been an extreme period of time, like a few weeks, I would recommend you can either go through Senator Mitchell's office or try to contact one of our America's Job Centers of California. As I mentioned earlier, they're a good resource. They can't fix it on the spot, but they can be your advocate moving it forward. And because of the restrictions with COVID-19, they're only accepting phone calls, but their direct numbers are all right on the website. When you do a lookup based on your zip code, it'll give you their direct line. You're open from 8 to 5. Just explain to them that you've been having extreme difficulties. It's been a very long period of time, and you were wondering if someone could assist them or call them back regarding their claim.
Okay, if you applied for unemployment insurance but were denied, who will submit your PUA or PEUC application? So this is someone who was denied because they didn't qualify.
Okay.
They probably applied before you rolled out PUA because that was weeks into the pandemic.
Correct.
And so do they have to then take the initiative to apply for PUA, or does it kind of automatically get kicked over?
Well, it depends on when they filed it. If they filed the claim, say back in March, and they got an award notice with a 0 amount, they would need to refile for PUA because the system wasn't accepting PUA applications. And our website was very clear about you need to keep checking back for when we are accepting applications. However, if you did file, let's say a regular claim on or after the 28th of April, the system would go through it, whatever it does, checking to see if you qualify for a regular claim, and then it would automatically file the PUA claim for you. But again, we had so many claims on the 28th in that week that it takes a while.
Right.
Probably 2 weeks.
And what we probably should have done was like separate the week by alphabet. If you're A through F, apply Monday. I mean, as I watched it roll out, I thought there are probably ways that we could have managed that a little more efficiently. Yeah. Another question for you, Mr. Gomez. What options do you have if you've been denied benefits?
Well, you always have the legal right to appeal any decision that the EDD makes. And that applies to not only claimants, but employers as well. The process is fairly straightforward. Whenever we disqualify you, you get a notification in the mail. It gives you the reasons, and unfortunately, it gives you a lot of code. It's kind of a legal document, so not always the easiest thing to understand. However, they attach a form called an appeals form, and you can complete that and provide information back to the EDD. If there's additional information that you feel would help resolve your claim issue, please, please, please include that, because our goal really is to avoid having it go to an administrative law judge for a hearing. If we can take that additional information and reverse the decision, with in-house at the EDD, we'd much prefer that rather than having to schedule a hearing with an administrative law judge. And then there's another part to that process. You go to you go to your hearing. Let's just say we weren't able to reverse it in advance. You go to your hearing. The judge affirms the EDD's decision. You also have a second level appeal option at that point as well, if you don't agree with the judge's decision. So the process is really there for you. You always have that legal right, and please exercise that if you feel the need and have that information for us.
So, Mr. Gomez, tell me this, because I'm clear that because of the pandemic, we've had to, all over state government, come up with workarounds. I had to come up with workarounds to make sure that my constituents were still being serviced in my office. So you talk about going to court, but the courts are closed.
They are doing telephone interviews.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I should have clarified that. And also, just for your reference, everyone, if you live quite a distance from, where your hearing would be, they'll help you by phone. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to appear physically if there's some sort of restriction that prevents you from appearing in person. But right now, because of COVID-19, it's all by phone or teleconference or whatever technology they're using.
Got it. How do people find out how to access the job centers you talked about? I think I've toured the one in Culver City. Is there a single website they can go to get access to all the job centers?
Yeah, if the easiest way to do it, and this is how I can't remember the exact page myself, I just type in EDD Office Locator, and that should bring it up in your browser.
And that brings up the job centers?
Yes, and there's a link, and it'll say something like locations or something. It'll be hyperlinked, and you'll go there. What it does is it takes you into a statewide database, because we know there are some, claimants that maybe had to move out of state because they couldn't no longer stay in California. So maybe they need assistance at one, perhaps in Vermont or another state. You just type in your zip code. It'll bring up the closest locations to your area. One thing that I would caution you on is not all Ajccs offer the same array of services. So if it has comprehensive, that's what you want to look for, because that's the full array. We have veterans programs, we have youth programs, we have, in some cases, folks that are UI navigators. So those are the ones you want to focus on, if you can.
Okay. Two more quick questions. One, can you appeal an amount that is not accurate in your claim?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're more than happy to do that. As I mentioned, employers aren't foolproof either. Sometimes the wages get reported in the following quarter by accident, or just they were late being reported to us. So that's when you would want to, and we would hope to be able to avoid any sort of a, appeals process for you. We would just simply ask you to submit your pay stubs or your W-2s so that we could take a look at them and make the adjustment based on that documentation.
Got it. One final question, then I'll make one comment just to clarify in terms of questions that have come up both in the Zoom chat and in questions raised on Facebook Live. So a number of people want to know what's the state's plan for sustaining unemployment benefits if the federal government doesn't extend the additional dollars. And that's a very good question. And I got to tell you, I don't know that I have a definitive answer. The state itself, because of this public health and economic pandemic, that is no one's fault. As a state, we plan for a recession, but a recession rarely, if ever, happens inside of 30 days, where the entire state and its economy has been shut down. And so it has catapulted us into a deep recession. And so, a part of balancing the state's budget this year, we are relying on the federal government to step up and continue to provide states across the country support and local government. And so we're pushing very hard for that. As you heard, the federal government typically is who steps up and provides these resources, particularly the new resources that have been made available through EDD because of the pandemic, making sure that people who didn't have W-2s, who didn't have employers who paid into the system, that the federal government has stepped in to provide as much care and support as possible. So I really don't know the answer to that. We are in the process of negotiating the state budget today and are relying very heavily on the federal government to step in. Let me say this. I know you are frustrated. I know you're desperate, and I get it. And we have been fielding calls in my district office since March 16th, when my own staff were required to work from home. We haven't opened up the Capitol yet. I get it. We will continue to do all that we can to use the legislative liaisons we have in the office to attempt to navigate the process. We have received lovely thank you notes for those of you that we've been able to help get through the process. I am clear that in 1 month's time, the department paid out more unemployment insurance benefits than they did in the entirety of 2019. And so their systems have been overwhelmed. I get it. Their computer systems aren't ideal. You know, we're on a state computer system, and the delay in his PowerPoint coming up is because our state systems, even as a state senator, aren't crackerjack and as efficient. And so I get it. Please know that we are working as hard as we can to support a state department that has no vested interest in ignoring you and not answering your calls. It's not about that. It's about it. It is a system that is overwhelmed. And I believe they are doing what they can as quickly as they can. I think the questions that you've sent to our office have helped lead to me asking questions of Secretary Sue when I have the opportunity to talk to her, which is pretty regular. And I've seen the adjustments that they've tried to make. The fact that we have Korean translation today is because, as you saw that list of languages they provide support in, Korean isn't there. And so we are pushing. You are helping to educate me and my staff on issues that continue to elevate. And we are going to try to continue to do our very best to get you answers as quickly as possible. I understand that this is your livelihood. I get it. And we're working hard to meet every demand that we can. All of the questions that you emailed that we didn't ask today, all of those in the chat will be followed up on. We have your contact information because you had to RSVP to participate. That contact, those answers won't happen overnight because we now have hundreds that we have to try to manage, get answers to, and respond to. With that, I am sorry. I'm reading the chat that some of you felt this was a waste of your time. I'm sorry. It was our effort to bring someone from EDD to participate, to see you, hear you, and understand the frustration you experience, which we hear from you calling and emailing our offices every day. We will continue to do the best that we can to represent you and try to hold EDD accountable to be the best state agency we need for them all to be. I appreciate you all participating today. This will be remain live on my Facebook Live. It was recorded. If there are people who weren't able to participate but you think might benefit from knowing this information, please have them watch it. And you have seen repeatedly the phone number, if you are a 30th Senate District constituent, the phone number to my district office, and the email to my office. If you're not a 30th Senate District constituent, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to your own state senator, because all of us have a responsibility to respond to the people we represent in the Senate. Fair enough? Thank you very much for your participation. I hope that you will continue to stay connected to our office. We will continue to try to bring you answers and information as often as we possibly can. Everybody have a great evening, and thanks for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gomez.
Thanks for the opportunity.